Hello everyone, this is Chris Cool for MTGOacademy.com, and I will be discussing a deck for the Classic format, which for those of you that don't play a lot of Magic Online, or only play the traditional formats, don't know. It's basically Vintage, but it has a different banned restricted list, because not all of the cards from Paper Magic are online yet. Mostly just Power is missing, but a couple other weird cards are missing. It affects Legacy a little bit too, but not a whole lot. So, in Classic, one of the neat things that you can do is play more than one Library of Alexandria, which this deck that I'm going to showcase is mostly built because I want to play Library of Alexandria. It's a blue-black control deck. I wanted to explore a mana drain deck and play Thoughtseize and Force of Will. So I just started twiddling around with, I guess it's called Jacerator, the control decks that try to land a Jace or a Tezzeret. I believe that it was Tezzerator a long time ago, and then people just started playing Jace instead of Tezzeret. And as you see, I have a 2-1 split here. Not sure if it's right. This deck features just a lot of ideas, and definitely will go through some changes after the event. I'm also recording this deck tech post DE, so you'll get to see me play it through 4 rounds of a Classic DE, but I already know what happened, and I definitely have cards in the sideboard in the main deck that need to either disappear completely or be adjusted around. So, a lot of Classic decks play fewer land than's conventional because either they have artifacts that produce mana, like I'm playing Mana Vault, Mana Crypt, and Sol Ring, or they just have really low converted mana costs, or they're like the Workshop decks and they have lands that produce more than 1 mana. But this is a more fairer mana deck. Sorry about that. And I wanted to have a decent amount of mana sources and ways to get mana sources. So I'm playing a massive 20 lands, including the 3 libraries, and a Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Sol Ring, and then there are 2 Trinket Mages to find any of the mana facts or main deck artifact lands. So, what does this deck try to do? Either I want to win with Time Vault and Voltic Key or Tezzeret, or land one of these large guys and end the game. You'll notice that there's nothing up here in the deck. A lot of artifact or control decks tinker into like a Blightsteel Colossus. I toyed with tinkering into an Inkwell Leviathan for a little while, but I actually like Wormcoil Engine a lot. It's a little bit resistant to artifact hate. I mean, it's no Blightsteel Colossus, but you can actually cast it like off of Mana Drain, or just off of the normal mana sources in the deck, which I really like. I tried to limit the amount of dead cards in this deck. You'll see in any potential match, you see that like there is a Cursed Scroll, a Grafdigger's Cage, a Neil's Spellbomb, a Voltic Key. Time Vault can kind of be a dead card. I have like a Singleton, Edict, what else? And then the 2 large guys. But I think with a configuration like this that I very regularly don't have multiple cards that I just can't do anything with. Like Oath kind of has a lot of dead cards because some of them are like playing Tinkerbot, and then they've got Oaths and a bunch of creatures, not a bunch, like Emrakul, Grizzlebrand, and then like some of them play Dragon's Breaths, and there's just a lot of cards dedicated to making the Oath strategy better, but then they don't do anything if you can't enact that plan. And then like the Workshop decks have a lot of cards that if they draw too many of them, they can fall behind, and like some of them are threat light, or some of them play too many threats, like lots of 6-drops, and they can get clogged in their hands with like a Wasteland on a Workshop, or if a Metalworker dies or something. So this deck tries to avoid those problems by just playing a lot of cards that will always be good or almost always be good, and then lots of like cantripping and card draw. So the deck, let's break it down just a little bit. I have some one-ofs, like I said, the Wormcoil Engine, and then Curse Scroll, Grafdigger's Cage, and Nihil Spellbomb. Those are basically kind of silver bullets. The one drops are for the 2 Trinket Mages that I played. So, like, I can hate out Dredge, Oath, possibly like a Green Sun Zenith or Birthing Pod, which, as you know, if you've been following AJ and I, we're kind of trying to make a thing. Curse Scroll, which is an idea, but I don't actually know how good of an idea it is. And then the mana. And then also I can just tinker up the Wormcoil Engine or Time Vault or Voltic Key, depending on like if I already have a Time Vault in play, to go infinite turns that way. And then a 3 of Baleful Strix. I started with 4 and I decided to move 1 to the board because like it's not always great. But I like the fact that it cantrips, it trades with almost any creature in the format, and you can pitch it to Force of Will, you can pitch it to a Thirst for Knowledge, and it gets around Lodestone Golem and Thorn of Amethyst from the shop decks. And then it's also pretty good against shop because you can block out a lot of their creatures and kill them. And then we have like a Diabolic Edict, which is okay against Delver, Bobs, Tarmogoyfish style decks. Then it's okay against like Workshop because a lot of times they just have one big creature, or like you can kill a Metalworker. And then also it's okay against Oath because all their creatures will die to the Edict effect, and then they have a couple creatures that you can't just like Dark Vanishing away, like Emrakul or Blightsteel Colossus or Gristlebrand, I guess. And then I'm only playing 2 drains. I like the card a lot, but as you see, I don't actually have a lot of stuff that I can drain into. A lot of times you just go Thirst for Knowledge after a drain, and then you can keep up mana after it. Or like a Jace. Occasionally you go into the Titan or the Wormcoil Engine. I'm playing the 2 Trinket Mages to help assemble Vault Key, and then just add additional land or find some of these more narrow cards. So the Trinket Mage also has the added effect of being able to be pitched to the Force of Will. And then gumming up the ground, I've kind of grown attached to just attacking for a little bit of damage here and there in Classic, because a lot of the decks, if you can get past the attrition phase, you just need ways to close out the game. And like if you're playing against stacks, they do a lot of damage to themselves with Ancient Tombs, or they can. So your clock is sped up against them, and then lots of decks take damage with like Vamp Tutors and paying life for Mental Missteps and Force of Wills. And then just cracking fetch lands, because fetch lands are pretty big in the format. And then we have like a Vamp Tutor and a Demonic Tutor and a Tezzeret to search up some of the artifacts. And then I also am playing a Blue Titan because I can pitch it to a Force of Will early if I really need to, and it has an ability that like will interact with Emrakul, which I think is pretty cool. The cards that are missing that you see in a lot of blue control decks are like Spell Pierce, Mental Misstep, possibly Steel Sabotage, Annul, and other incredibly narrow cards. They have powerful effects in Classic, but I did not want to gum up my hand with too many cards that would lose value after the first few turns of the game and really only be like Force of Will fodder, because I already have, I think, enough Force of Will fodder. I mean, I could probably get away with playing like a Misstep or a Spell Pierce or something in the main, but I'm not quite sure how great that would even be. Actually, I'm not quite sure how great the Snapcaster Mage is, just because like Thoughtseize and Demonic Tutor and Vamp are kind of awkward targets for Snapcaster. And then like Thirst for Knowledge and Snapcaster, that's a ton of mana. Usually you're not going to be casting Tinker twice in a game. Force of Will doesn't work, so I'm not quite sure about him either. But I do like the ability to have a body. The sideboard, as you can see, is mostly one-ofs, and I have two of a few cards. The reason for this is that classic decks are very easily modified from like a stock list, and the modifications make different sideboard cards interact with them completely differently. Like Delver lists. Some Delver lists, Disfigure is great, but some have Tarmogoyf, and I don't know. I've not really seen Nimble Mongoose played in Classic, but that would be another style of creature that would make Disfigure horrible. The main reason that Disfigure is in here is to kill off Dark Confidants. So if a deck is like a Dark Confidant deck, I can bring it in, and I can also kill off annoying hate creatures that come down with low toughness. And then if I play against something like Sly, I can gain some life. I have an additional Baleful Strix against creature decks or grindy decks or shop decks. A second Edict that I can bring in against any aggressive deck just to slow them down, or bring in against decks that are going to be casting Show and Tell for Emrakul or Oathing and the like. The main things that I wanted to make sure that I could deal with were the workshop decks, because beyond going first and Thoughtseize or a Force of Will, they can pretty much do whatever they want in the beginning stages of the game, and Hurkyl's Recall and Energy Flux are both pretty powerful effects against them. So I thought if I just had the ability to get to one of those cards, especially with Demonic Tutor, Vamp Tutor, and Brainstorm, I would be able to slow them down enough to overtake the game. It turns out that both of those cards, while good, don't necessarily mean that you win, especially with Tolarian Academy and the speed of some of the shop decks, like Energy Flux. I had 2 Energy Fluxes out against a person, and I still didn't feel like I had the match won. So that was weird. Then I also have 2 Mental Missteps, which are great against Brainstorm decks and combo decks that have lots of 1-drops. And then I also think that they're probably okay against red, because you can take out a Goblin Guide or another nasty 1-drop creature. You can counter a Pyroblast that's countering or destroying one of your things, and you can stop Vamp Tutor and Dark Rituals. And there's just lots of little 1-droppy type things where the Misstep is good. It's pretty good against Delver. And then I've got a Mind Break Trap against Storm, some anti-graveyard stuff. I make sure to split those cards because I like to have first options with my Trinket Mage, and then also the addition, or the different upsides that you get from them sometimes mean that if you're only playing Nihil Spell Bombs, maybe you need to be able to Thoughtseize your opponent and have a threaten to clear their graveyard on turn 1, and just by diversifying them you get around that, and then also you get around Pithing Needle a little. And then I have a Perish just because it's unfair when it's good. It could possibly be a Damnation, I'm not sure if that would be better, and an additional Thoughtseize, which to me seems incredibly powerful, especially when you're playing counterspells. So the deck, this blue-black deck, has a lot of flexibility, which I like. My mana base also, beyond the libraries, is all colored except for the artifact mana. And then I play a lot of basic lands, so I don't get wrecked by Wastelands and Crucible or the like. I like having this option. I think that one thing that I learned in the first Classic Quarter qualifier tournament was don't expect to be able to do whatever you want with your mana base in this format. And I took this lesson to heart, when I was designing or tweaking this deck, because I based it off of like I said, one of the Jace Raider style lists that I saw, and then culling it down to 2 colors increases the consistency a little bit, because while you can do a lot in Classic, you really can't just do anything you want. You have to be prepared for the disruption. And lastly, the libraries. Since I wanted to try this card out, like the first version of this deck had strip mines and some wastes in it, no libraries. And then I played against like an Oath deck that landed a library on turn 1 on the play or draw, probably on the play. And then you can, like if you have Force of Will and you really need to use it, you can. It just sucks for your library plan. But then the next turn, you can tap library, draw an extra card, and then like Thoughtseize. And that sequence of plays is incredibly powerful when you're playing an attrition match. I played against Skull Clamp, and libraries kept me on even card advantage for quite some time. It's a crazy card, and that's why like the deck has a lot of cantrips with like Baleful Strix, Spellbomb, Brainstorm, Snapcaster, and Trinket Mage are a little bit cantrippy, and then lots of card draw to get back up to 7 with the 4 thirsts. So, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I hope to edit this deck and show that it actually can compete. So, thank you.